you, and good evening. Wow, I am assuming everybody's had a wonderful day, and I am very excited to be here with you this evening. One of the things I love to do, number one, I love to talk to students, and number two, I love to talk about community colleges, because whenever we talk about community colleges in North Carolina, we always get this aha moment that people don't know a lot about the community colleges in the state of North Carolina. And as you've already been told, our community colleges system is the third largest community college system in the nation. Only Texas and California are larger in number of colleges and in number of students. So what I want to do, went too far there. In terms of our agenda, I want to tell you a little bit about the North Carolina Community College System, okay? Because that's what I want you to hear about, that so you can understand how vast and how large our system actually is. And then I want to talk about some major initiatives that we have in the community colleges, not so that you can know what the initiatives are, so that you can understand why technology leadership is so important in the North Carolina Community College System. And then I want to talk about this whole concept that I call overcoming IT. What do we mean by overcoming IT, and why do we need to overcome IT, and why am I saying overcome IT if I'm an IT professional? If I lead technology for the 58 community colleges in this state, then why should I be talking about overcoming IT? And then finally, leadership strategies and lessons learned. And then, of course, at the end, we'll have any questions that you might have. Now, first of all, when we talk about the mission of the community college system, the one thing you need to understand about the community college system and its mission is one key word, and that is open door. Anyone that wants to be a part of the North Carolina Community College System, our doors are open. And one thing you also need to know about the community college system is that every citizen in North Carolina is within 30 minutes or 30 miles of a community college in this state. All right, so that's why there are so many. There are 58 colleges in the state, and if you drive down I-40, probably every so many miles you'll see such and such community college. If you drive down 85 going through North Carolina, you'll see the same thing. So, and we are very proud of that system, but very proud of our colleges and very proud of the system. But one of the things that we want you to understand is that we are here to educate so that people can get jobs, so that we can put people in the workforce and we can improve the lives of citizens in North Carolina. That's what we're here for. Now, one thing that's very similar about our colleges, but also very different, the similar piece is we develop programs based on the needs of the community. So if there is an economic need in the community, then what the community college will do will develop programs around that particular economic need. So for example, if there are a need for nurses, if there are hospitals, for example, if you go down to Pitt Community College down in Greenville, North Carolina, and you have the East Carolina hospitals and some other hospitals around there, you will see a large medical programs at Pitt Community College. You come here up this way and you go to Durham Tech or Wake Technical Community College, what you'll see is a lot of technology-driven programs. So the programs in our colleges are based on what the community needs in terms of the workforce. When companies come to North Carolina, the first thing they ask is, do you have the people in that community that can work for us? All right, that's the first thing they ask. And do you have the people? And if you don't have the people, can the people in the area be trained? Well, that's where we come in, and we actually work towards training the citizens so that they can be put to work inside of their community. Now, what does a typical community college student look like? 18 to 25-year-old, that's what we call traditional. All right, 18 to 25, and then we have lots of non-traditional students, 26 or older. How many of you know someone that for some reason, for whatever reason, may have been laid off of a job? Okay, anybody? All right, so and you think about that, usually the first place they go is to a community college because they want to be able to upgrade their skills or expand the skills they already have. It's very interesting that when we look at the population of our colleges, a lot of the people that come to our colleges have people that already have 4-year degrees. So they're either coming back to get additional training, to get some sort of certification, and then when they do that, then they are able to actually get a different kind of skill to go into the workforce. Now, what do? College transfer, you've already been told about that. A lot of our students spend their first 2 years at a community college and then their next 2 years at one of the 16 public institutions or one of the 30 some odd private institutions in the state. Associate degrees, that's what we call our terminal degree in terms of the AA or AS degree. Basic skills. We spend a lot of time helping people just to learn the basics of reading, writing, English as a second language, GED, continuing education. Those are those courses that lead to some sort of certification. If you were to go to a community college and you wanted Cisco certification, then you would more than likely enroll in a continuing education program. Displaced workers. These are people that have been laid off. These are people who are coming back to find out, well, what can I do? We spend a lot of time with people just trying to determine, well, based on what you have, based on the education and the skills that you have, then what can we help you learn to do? And then a lot of people just want to start over. Okay, I just want to start over. I'm tired of doing what I'm doing, and I just want to start over. So we get a lot of new career people also. Now, I put this particular map up here so you could see where the colleges are located in North Carolina. This map goes from, or should go, from 1 to 58, and you will notice that in almost every county or in some service area there is a community college. You could find a community college within 10 to 12 miles of each other. There's no certain distance, but what we look at is every community college in our state has a particular service area. So if you go to Wake Tech, for example, Wake Tech service area is what? Wake County. You go to Durham Technical Community College, where they're going to advertise and where they're going to respond to the need, the economic need would be Durham County and Orange County. You go to Pitt Community College, and what you'll see is they're serving the needs of the area in the Greenville, North Carolina area. So as you can see, from the coast all the way to the mountains, there are community colleges. Now, one of the things that is very interesting is some of our community colleges in the western part of the state are closer to 7 other state capitals than they are to Raleigh, North Carolina. Our furthest out community college is Tri-County Community College, and it takes me 7 hours to drive there from here. Okay, it is a long way, but we serve that area, and so we get a lot of people from different states, especially coming to our border campuses, like right there at Virginia on the western side, and then down here at the very southern parts, looking at some of our southern colleges. So when you talk about creating success, what we intend to do is to create success in terms of students, in terms of jobs, in terms of the workforce for the citizens of North Carolina. Now, when we talk about creating success for students, our numbers have increased. At one point, they were 850,000, but now we are almost at approximately 900,000 students. That is a lot of students across the state of North Carolina. As it says there, about 1 in 8 people have or are attending some sort of course at a community college. Now, our largest college, which is Central Piedmont Community College, is larger in terms of student population than any of the 16 public or 30 some odd private four-year institutions in the state. Central Piedmont has about 70,000 students. It is huge when it comes to the number of students and the number of people and Central Piedmont is in Charlotte, and that particular area has to serve. So when you talk about citizens in North Carolina, we look at in terms of 18 and up. Keep in mind, we also serve high school students. There are a lot of high school students that come and we do service them. You may have heard of something recently the governor just passed called Career and College Promise, and that is that every student in North Carolina will have access to a college career coming out of high school. Of course, the community college play a big role in that. But bottom line is, we have lots of students, we have a huge faculty base, and there's a lot in terms of what we do to service the people of this state. The kinds of things that we do for the jobs population in terms of the workforce is we offer programs. We've already talked about continuing education. There are some people that come to college and don't even know how to write a resume or how to dress. Well, we need to tell them about that, okay? You'd be surprised. If you've worked in a mill or in some sort of job for 25 years and then all of a sudden you get laid off, you need to know what is expected of you when you go to work. That's our Human Resource Development Program, or HRD program. Also, our Small Business Center. Every community college has a small business center. If you'd like to start your own business, and a lot of you probably will in some form or fashion, if you'd like like to start your own business, our small business centers can walk you through from the very first step into the very getting you out the door in terms of starting that small business. And so entrepreneurship is something that is very important to us at community colleges. Bio network, in terms of looking at the biology and the biological sciences and what can we do with bio network. The majority of and that says North Carolina Emergency Services, fire, rescue, basic law enforcement, the majority of the people that in those areas have been trained by a community college. Now I'm going to tell you something. How many of you have been stopped by a police officer? It's okay if you raise your hand. Okay, it's okay. Okay, all right. Now, if you ever get stopped by a police officer, one thing you can always do is ask them, where'd you go to school? And they'll probably say, I went to X community college. And then just start up a conversation with them. They'll get real excited about that and probably forget to give you the ticket that they were intending to give you in the first place. But anyway, so but most of the fire, rescue, basic law enforcement people, they are trained by community colleges. And they are top-notch trained people to come and to help us in terms of need. Customized training, that's something that's very similar that we do in terms of training, where companies come and we go into companies and we actually train the company's staff based on the need of that particular company. So in terms of what we do and how we do it, we touch training and education from the very first time somebody may come out of high school all the way till they graduate, to workers, to continuing education, to people who are laid off, you name it. If they have to be put back to work, that is what we do at community colleges. And we have a passion for it and we love it. Now, before I go to the next slide. What I want to do is I'm getting ready to show you a major IT initiative. I want to shift focus for a minute. And the IT initiative in itself is not important, because I don't want you to have to think you got to remember the IT initiative or something like that, because that's really not important. But what I want you to remember is I want you to see how vast what we do and how large the things that when we take on an IT project, you have to multiply it by 58. All right, we don't do something at my level for just one college. Now, each individual college can do things for themselves. And if you go onto a college campus, they'll have their own IT people, they'll have their own networks, that sort of thing. But one of the things that we do is that when we do something at the system office, and my office is located in downtown Raleigh, when we do something at the system office, then we are doing it for all 58. So when there is an initiative that I have to be responsible for, it's never just for one college. It is for all 58 campuses. So I want to give you an example of something we do, and then something we've done, and then I want to show you a little bit of how do you lead something from my perspective and from my level. How do you lead that? And what are the kinds of things that you need to know in order to be able to lead something as large as this? And we're going to walk you through those. Now, a major IT initiative that we've had, and what's important about this slide is what I have in bold here. The project itself was called the College Information System, or CIS implementation. Now, what's important about this is that it was the largest and most sophisticated technology endeavor in higher education. What we did with the 58 community colleges in this state has never been done, and as yet has never been done. I actually see our vendor, one of our vendors, former vendor sitting in this cave in the room, who actually helped us through this process. But this has actually never been done. We have, the community college system in North Carolina has won awards for it. And so, but basically other states, in terms of colleges, whether it's 4-year or 2-year, have tried and failed. But the North Carolina community college system actually did this implementation, and we are successful at it, and we're continuing to run the implementation as we speak. And again, it's called College Information System. Basically, what we were able to do is to take an ERP system and take that across all 58 colleges and the system office where I work, so all of our colleges would have a consistent HR, which is human resources, finance, and student system. Now keep in mind, there were 58 different systems before we did this. So now you can imagine trying to implement a system across 58 colleges. That in itself is difficult. But then when you try to make the kind of change that is necessary to implement this across 58 colleges, when you try to make that kind of change amongst people who have been doing the old way for lots of years, and when you try to make that change, you can imagine the kinds of challenges that we face. So again, the key here is not the system itself or what we did, but I just want to show you how large these things are that we have to do. Now when you talk about this particular system overview, again, what's important here, the fact that we had student financials, HR, there were all these different components, and again, all these different components, and this is just sort of a triangle of all the different things we had to do. So if you look at what we had to do, this is primarily it. These are all the different components that we were trying to have consistent across all of our community colleges. Now what you see here, and I won't go through all of this, but all of these system components were different across all 58. And what we were doing is we were trying to make them the same across all 58. That was a major, major feat for us. It had never been done. And to our knowledge, it still hasn't been done successfully in terms of a system going across the system. People have done it from individual colleges, but in terms of an entire system, and that's why when things like this happen, people look to North Carolina and say, North Carolina, how did you make this happen? So in terms of the student system, the financial system, the human resource system, these are all the different areas that we said we wanted all to be the same across all 58 of our colleges. In terms of enhancements, because we are in the state of North Carolina has what is called a comprehensive community college system. That means we do degree programs, we do basic education and basic skills education, and we do community continuing education. Now what does that mean? That means there are some things that are about North Carolina's community college system that you just can't take software out of a box, off of shelf, and do something. There's got to be some enhancements for it. These are the 17 enhancements that we had to build on top of what was already in the ERP package that we were actually going to buy. Again, the important thing here is to understand how large this is, not necessarily everything we had to do, but just how large it is. And you think about if you had to do the previous slide and this slide just across North Carolina State University. Okay? Now, does North Carolina State still have PeopleSoft? Y'all still use PeopleSoft here? I think you do. Okay. I was here as a professor when that implementation first happened. And I remember all of the different challenges that went on when North Carolina State University went to PeopleSoft, and all the different changes that we had to do in terms of like grant submissions, and we were doing grants and all the things that we had to submit. And I vividly remember the young lady who was in charge of grants for the College of Education, how frustrated she was when she was trying to put in information about the grants that we were either working on or trying to receive. I vividly remember how frustrated she would get with this new system, okay? And I thought about her when we were implementing this system, and I said, now her frustration now is, the frustration she feels is now times 58 for what I'm getting ready to experience, okay? Because believe it or not, when people get frustrated with something and they don't know how to do something, you know whose name is on every single piece of communication that went out and whose phone number was on it? Mine. So who do you think they called? Well, it was not Ghostbusters, it was me. And every time there was a problem, whether it was a problem from the level of the president down to whomever, I got the phone call about it. Now, what I want you to see here is these are some of the issues that we had that impacted us. Again, I just want to show you, get to this point so you can see, well, how do you lead this kind of organization? What kind of leadership helps get through this kind of organization in terms of this kind of initiative, but then in IT in general, what kind of leadership is necessary? And it's not what you think. Believe it or not, it is not necessarily having to know all the technical details about what's being done. The technology is important, but there are a whole lot of other things that are even more important in terms of leadership when it comes to leading a technology organization. Some of the issues that we had to deal with, you can see them here, presidential commitments, both from the colleges, from the 58 colleges and from the state perspective, re-engineering, integrations, consultants and vendor management, implementation time and cost, selecting and recruiting employees. We had a lot of people to retire. When we started to put this particular system in place, a lot of people were like, you know what, this is not for me, I'm just going to retire. I've got enough years, I can just retire. Training employees, employee morale. You know, people often say that SAS is the best place to work. Well, I guess it's been named the best place to work, and I guess it is. But when you get in the community college system, when people get in the door and begin to work at a community college, they never leave. They retire out, because it is just that good to work there. Now, why? Because we're changing lives. We see ourselves change lives every day. That's a different kind of conversation, but we do see people's lives being changed in the community. But in terms of this sort of thing, this particular project and this particular initiative was one thing that made a lot of people say, you know what, this is not for me, I've got to go, I'm going to retire. So on top of the initiative itself, the vastness of the initiative, trying to implement it across 58 colleges, it took a different kind of leadership to make this particular project happen, along with some of the projects that we have going on today. We now have a system-wide, what we call a portal implementation. There's a statewide data initiative that actually NC State is a part of. We're actually looking at developing a longitudinal data system where all the data for all education will be in one place and be accessible by anyone. Completion by design, the Gates Foundation has literally given the community colleges in North Carolina millions of dollars to look at what we're doing in terms of education. Same thing in terms of the federal government with accelerating opportunity and basic skills. And then we're redesigning math. We're redesigning how we do math in community colleges. These are just a few of the initiatives that there is a technology interface. Now keep in mind, a technology interface could be from a data perspective. It could be from a technology perspective in terms of servers and your hardware, software, your infrastructure. But regardless of what it is, whatever is done in community colleges always has a technology perspective. There is never a meeting or never a grant that goes out or never an initiative that comes forth that doesn't have to come across my desk for my signature saying that somebody on my staff has looked at it. Now, the kind of people that report to me, I have 3 associate vice presidents, I have 1 executive director, and of course I have an assistant, and they report directly to me. And then under their organizations, there are programmers, there are consultants, and lots of different kinds of people that are in their organization, and those organizations under me. And we're the ones that actually make this kind of thing happen. We're the ones that say, okay, all of these initiatives that we're going to make happen. So my job is to lead that. And people always ask me, how in the world do you know all of this stuff to be able to lead it? Well, I don't have to know all of this stuff to be able to lead it. That's what you hire good people for, okay? You don't need, that's what we hire y'all for when y'all graduate. So remember that. You can give me your resume before I leave. But that's what we hire people for. I don't need to know that. I need to know how to lead in a technology organization. I need to know how to do that. So what does that look like? And I want you to understand something. Leadership varies. That's why I put this up here. Your speaker the last time, if you were here the last time, I'm not sure how many of you were here at the last speaker series, was an actual leader of an IT company. He was the CEO of a part of AT&T, if you remember that. I, on the other hand, I am IT leadership within a company. This is my boss over here. That's Dr. Scott Rawls. He is the president of the North Carolina Community College System. Now, there's a big difference in what the gentleman on the left-hand side has to do versus my responsibility, okay? Because I am responsible for making sure that the leader of the community college system can lead, and I'm the one that has to make sure that all the technology components that he has to have, that I can take his vision, whatever that vision is, I can take the vision of the North Carolina Community College System, and I can structure that vision and then implement it out across 58 colleges. That can be very difficult from a technology perspective, but I will tell you, the technology piece of what I do is the easy part, okay? It is easy to configure servers. It is easy to hire programmers. It is easy to make programming happen. I'm not saying that it's easy jobs, because I'm sure if I call my office right now, there are at least 10 or 12 people that are probably still there, okay? And they're working on something because we have something that's due out in a couple of days. But the key here is that when I lead, or when a leader is within and leads within a company, especially when the business is not IT. The business of the North Carolina Community College System is not IT, it is education. So when you are leading an IT component of an organization where the business is not IT, it's a lot different than what you see on the left-hand side, which is an actual IT company and leading within that. Because what you have to do is to be able to translate what comes forth as vision, what comes forth as initiatives, and then literally be able to implement it and make it happen. That is a very difficult job. You have to be able to get requirements from people. Okay? How am I going? Let me give you an example. We have requirements from the federal government that say if you are going to use federal money in certain areas, there are certain requirements you have to have. Okay? And in order to do that, there are certain feedback, certain data that is required back to the federal government. Now, my staff doesn't know what those requirements are. They shouldn't have to know. They're programmers. Okay? They are project managers. They are not the kinds of people that understand or should understand what those federal requirements are. So what we have to do is to have that teaming effect, and that's why you see the arrows going back and forth between President Rawls and myself, is you have to have that teaming effect because we literally have to feed each other. There has to be some business requirements and some vision coming from one piece, and then that has to be sent to the technology people, my staff, to be able to understand how do we carry this out. So I want you to understand that the leadership of somebody leading an IT company is different, a different kind of leadership than what I have to do, which is IT leadership within an organization, specifically if that organization is not an IT organization. Now, how do we overcome IT? And this is how I lead. People always ask me, well, how do you lead? What are the things you look at? How do you make decisions? I'm not going to go through all of how I make decisions and what the decision-making process looks for me and that sort of thing, because with me, everything is situational. I literally have to look at every single situation. By the time it gets to my level, it is a problem. By the time it gets to me, it is a real problem, okay? Also, by the time it gets to me, it should be solved. Okay, by the time it gets to me, somebody should be saying, Dr. Williams, here's the problem, here are the alternatives and the ways that we think we should go about solving it. But if that is not the case, then what do I do? How do I move forward? What do I look at? What are those things that I make sure happens in every single leadership situation? And what I'm getting ready to show you is something that I actually learned here many, many years ago when I was working on my doctorate degree. And it seems like such a long time ago, especially I'll be turning 50 soon, and so it seems like a long time ago when I was in this particular class. But I have used this over and over and over. And at some point, you don't even realize you're using it. You don't even realize that this is something that you're doing. It's just the way that you do leadership. When you are a leader, regardless of whether it's an IT organization or whatever, most of the decisions you make are not necessarily IT decisions. Okay, so what do I use? What are the things that I think about every time there is a decision to be made? Every time there is an initiative? Every time I have to have some sort of question to somebody, what are the things I think about? And there are 4 frames. And this may be familiar to you, those of you that have had, ever seen Bowman and Deal. Is anybody familiar with that particular model of leadership? No one? Okay, well there's your homework assignment. Go look it up, okay? Go look it up, Bowman and Deal, B-O-L-M-A-N, Deal, D-E-A-L. Go look it up because it is truly something that you have to lead and be able to lead across all 4 of these frames to make sure that you cover everything. Because keep in mind, when you are an IT leader, there is more that you have to be aware of other than just the IT. The IT part will come. In my business, IT is to me zeros and ones. Give me the time, give me the money, give me the people, it can be fixed. It's all the other things that happen around that create challenges for me. So what do I think about when I make decisions, when I lead IT? I look at the structure, I look at the organization, which is the human resources. I look at what Bowman and Deal call, a political frame, and then there's something else called a symbolic frame. Whenever I make decisions, whenever there is something going on, I'm always looking at it from all 4 of these frames because it makes a difference, or it could make a difference in how I'm going to respond. So, for those of you that are aspiring IT leaders, for those of you that may already be in IT leadership, if you're in IT leadership and you are not in an IT organization, these are the areas that you need to look at as you make your decision. They're called the 4 frames of leadership. I use them all the time. I don't consciously say, well, let me look at this frame, this frame, this frame, and that. But I am asking questions that come from each of these 4 frames. When I ask questions about what's going on, when I'm asking questions, when I'm making decisions, more than likely I'm looking at one of these 4. Now, let's look at this. This is just a diagram that sort of shows you some one-liners in terms of what each of these frames are about. We're going to look at each one of these individually, but I just wanted to show you that particular model. Let's look at the first one, the structural framework. Now, the structural framework literally is sort of like you focus on strategy, you focus on environment, implementation, experimentation, adaptation. This particular frame yields itself to technology. If you are a first-level technology manager, this is probably the frame that you're leading from, okay? You're looking at those things in terms of what are things costing, what kind of structure do you have, what do we need to do to implement, what kind of strategies need to be in place. This is something that I use, but it is not what I do the majority of the time. Okay? When I lead the majority of the time by the structure piece of it, the structural frame, it's something I ask about. It is something that is brought to me, but in terms of my leadership, I know it exists. I know I have to make sure that I can lead from this particular area, but if you talk about the leadership and what I spend time doing, this is about 20-25%, if that much, okay? Because it's other people's jobs to get this part right, okay? It's my job to be responsible, excuse me, let me take that back. It's my job to be accountable for this. I don't do it, but I'm accountable for it. So if something happens in my division or within technology, I'm accountable for it. I don't do the work, but I am accountable for it. So when you talk about leadership, and one of the things that you will hear me say over and over and over is nothing is more important in leadership than collaboration. If you can't collaborate, if you can't work with other kinds of people other than yourself, that means other kinds of people other than technical folk. If you can't work with that, then you are not going to be successful as a leader in technology. It doesn't matter what kind of organization you might be in. You have to be able to collaborate. So collaborative leadership is something that I literally live for, all right? It's something that when I'm sitting at a table, usually there are more people outside of technology at that table than there are people that are within technology, okay? And that's just the way it works. So when you talk about collaborative leadership and structural framework, it means that we have to focus on those structural elements, okay? What are those things that will make it work, okay? They could be policies, they could be hardware, software, lots of different things to make it work, but it's something that you can't forget. Again, once you get to the level, the vice president's level or a management level, if you're at a first level management, you do a lot of this. If you're in executive level management, 20-25% of your job may be looking at the structural component. You can't forget it exists because that is your job. Okay, that's what you're accountable for. You cannot forget it exists. But in terms of actually doing this work, that is not something that I do a lot of, okay? Now, let's look at the other frame. This is the frame that causes most technology leaders or leadership in the technology areas the most heartache, and that is the human resource frame. The human resource frame is where you are empowering people, where you are working with people. You're trying to get people to follow something that either is your vision or a vision that you are moving forward someone else's vision. The human resource frame means that your focus is on people. Your focus is on people. I have all different kinds of people in my division. All different kinds of people. And I will tell you, one part of my job that I have to do is get to know them all. I need to know what makes them tick and what makes them turn off. I need to know how they're going to work, because if there's a problem, I need to be able to put that person with the right person to get the job done. Now, do I do that personally? No. But the people that I train, the people that report to me, the people that carry out the work that I'm accountable for, I make sure that I teach them how important people are to, or human resource component is to any kind of organization. Let me tell you the biggest downfall or the biggest challenge that we have in technology projects within the community college system is not the technology. It is the people. And if you can't deal with people, and you don't have to be a people person. People say, well, I'm not a people person, you know, I just don't like to deal with people, okay? All right? You don't have to be a people person, all right? Now, I am. I love people. You know, I love being around people and love talking and that sort of thing. And I adore teaching. So I'm really having a good time. Can y'all tell I'm having a good time there? But I adore people. But one of the things that you have to be able to do is you have to be able to focus on people. Doesn't matter what level of management you are, you have to be able to focus on people. If you cannot get the people to work together, you are not going to be able to have them carry out a vision. It is my job to make sure, again, taking our CEO, the president of our system, taking that vision, his vision, the vision of the 58 community colleges, whatever initiatives get put on our plate by the legislature or the governor, it is my job to take those and implement those from a technology perspective. Now, I do that because I know how to empower people, know how to make sure staff development happens, know how to make sure that there is support, there is empowerment. If you don't know how to do that, if you can't do that on a daily basis, all right? Let me give you something that happened a couple of days ago. I was walking down the hall and I was very sick. I mean, literally, I was sick. The allergy thing, you know, with all the pollen and all that sort of thing. And usually if I walk down the hall, I say hello, everybody hears it. I'm from a small town called Rockingham, and we just talk loud, okay? We just talk loud. That's just the way we do. So when I say hello, everybody knows Dr. Williams is in the hall, okay, because everybody has heard me. So that particular day, I was sick. I didn't feel like saying hello. I was just trying to get to the next step to where I had to go, literally trying to step to the next step. And then I saw a person walk by me. I didn't speak my normal, hey, how you doing, hello, what's going on? I didn't do that. I just kept focused on where I had to go. The person goes to my office, asks my assistant, what is wrong with Dr. Williams? Is she okay? Because she didn't say hello to me today. Okay? Now that doesn't mean that you have to say hello to every single person you walk down the hall in, but people have to know that you are approachable. People have to know that your goal is their best interest. Okay? People have to know that if they don't, it's going to be very difficult for you to lead them. So the human resource component, you've got to be responsive to people's needs. Structure, human resource. People, organizations and structure, organizations and people, you've got to be able to lead in that particular frame. Now, political. I work for state government. I cannot escape the political frame. Everything that I do has some sort of political implication to it. Everything, all right? I make a decision, I may have to go get money for it. We spend a lot of time educating legislators on what it is that we do, all right? We implemented not too long ago the only learning object repository. It's a repository for digital content. It was done by the community colleges. Now the public schools, the universities, both public and private, actually have information or content in that particular digital repository. Okay, it was about $600,000. It doesn't sound like a lot of money from a 58 college perspective, 58 community college perspective, but try to get that amount of money in your budget to be able to implement it. Because part of what I do is educating legislators on what it is that we want to do. Okay? Because keep in mind, technology is changing. A lot of the legislators are there, have not experienced this technology. So when you talk about the political frame, you've got to be able to negotiate. You've got to understand that there are political realities that exist. And so you have to ask questions based on that. If there is something that's going on in my division, I need to be able to ask the question, what is the legislature going to say about this? Is there a legislator that is not going to be appreciative about what we're going to do? Will the governor be okay with this? When we make those kind of decisions, those are the kinds of questions we have to answer. Now that's state government. Then you have to talk about the politics within the organization itself. There are 58 colleges, which means there are 58 presidents. Now, can we please every single president? No. Can't do that. But does the politics of those presidents play a role when I'm making a decision? Yes. So what do? I go and I say, you know what, President so-and-so, I need you to work with me and back me up on this one, okay? So you go out and you have to get those cheerleaders, those people that are going to back you up in what it is that you're going to do. You have to be able to operate outside of technology if you're going to lead technology. That's what we mean by overcoming IT. You notice that IT, the zeros and ones, those kinds of things are things that you do every day. It's these components, the HR, the structural, the political, it's these kinds of things that if we don't do them, if we don't operate in this vein on a consistent basis, it's not something that you can just say, here's a book, learn how to do it. You just got to know the kinds of questions to ask. And sometimes I'll ask my staff questions and they'll go, well, Dr. Williams, why did you ask that? I said, don't worry about why I asked it, just go find the answer. And it'll come up in a minute why I'm asking that particular question. And it always happens. It always happens. When we were working on the project that I showed you before, the College Information System project, I know that the vendor was getting just as frustrated with me as I was getting with them. How do I know that? Because we told each other so. But when we look at the work that had to be done, they had to understand that I had to respond to the political frame. That particular project cost us starting $10 million, and the General Assembly gave us $15 million a year to be able to implement it. Now, when the state of North Carolina gives you $15 million a year to implement something that has never been done, then you better be able to operate in the frame that they're accustomed to, okay? And that's that political frame. So, If you're going to be an IT leader, if you're going to be in leadership in IT, then you have to remember the technology piece is a very small part of your job. You are going to have to make sure you understand how to deal with people and then how you have to deal with politics. That's both internal and external. You'll notice here, building power bases, coalition building. Again, that collaborative leadership. You've got to make sure that you understand that those realities of politics exist and do not forget them. Last one is a symbolic framework. This is sort of like that prophet, that kind of person that inspires everybody. Okay, this is the kind of person that inspires. Now, what you will hear Bowman and Deal say is that when you look at their text, you will hear them say that you're operating in one or the other. That is very, very seldom that you're going to get a person that can integrate all of these. My philosophy is that in addition to the other three, if I don't get this one, if I don't inspire the people that I work for, if I am not that happy, joyful example, if I'm not that passionate person for community colleges, then I cannot expect my people to be. I don't ask my people to do anything. I don't ask my staff to do anything that I am not willing to do. Let me give you an example. We had a huge security effort with our library system. Again, our library system is all 58 colleges. We had someone to tap into it, and there was some sensitive information, okay, protective information in there. It was like driver's license number, you know, whatever you fill out when you get a library card. Anyway, it was hacked into. The hacker was able to get down to that level. There are some requirements of the state that if that happens, then these are the things that you have to do. These are the pieces that you have to make sure happen. We had to notify about 58,000 people across the state of North Carolina that their personal identifiable information may have been hacked into. Now, the way you do that, according to our attorney, is that you literally had to put letters in the mail and let them know that. So we had to get information from colleges, all that. But here's the thing that I'm talking about. When you're going to inspire people, you have to make sure that you're willing to do whatever it is that you're asking them to do. Now, that was right around Christmas time. And I'll just be very transparent with you. I was having a bad year. I was tired, okay? There was so much work going on, and I had just gotten kind of discouraged myself. Then all of a sudden, this thing happens. It was all over the news. It was everywhere. You know, the thing is, you can't go to a community college library because somebody can get your information, and then you know, they'll go out and they'll use your credit card, whatever. But anyway, it was just gotten to be a really bad year. But one of the things that we had to do, 58,000 letters. That means that 58,000 envelopes had to be stuffed, all right? Now, I don't like to stuff envelopes. I don't know about you, but stuffing envelopes is not something that I wanted to do then or would like to do now. Those envelopes had to be stuffed, okay? My staff said, Dr. Williams, we're going to do this and we're going to make sure it gets done. Now, that's that human resource piece, okay? They were there, they wanted to do it. This is where the symbolic piece comes in. They said we're going to do this because we know that it will help the students and the faculty and the staff or whoever used the library in the state of North Carolina. I walk into a room one day, and this is the 5th floor in our building. It's where they're like a room about this large. I walk into a room, and there is almost everybody in the building, my staff and other people outside of my staff, stuffing envelopes. Now, I'll just be very transparent again. It made me cry, okay? Because I looked at them and I said, you know what? Have I inspired them to the point that they will take time to come in here and stuff envelopes? Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but you try to get almost 100 folk in a room to stuff envelopes without having to ask them to do it. They just knew it needed to be done. The inspiration that we had given them beforehand was now working. It kind of gave me a little bit of my joy and my happiness back. But you know what I had to do? I had to sit down and I had to stuff envelopes with them. When you're going to be leading from the symbolic framework, you've got to put yourself in the position of the people that you lead. You have to be able to inspire them. You have to be able to make sure that they know that the work that they are doing means something to the organization. Now, if you can't put yourself in a place where you are leading or where you're leading from, then you're not going to be a very good leader in IT. Okay? Now, can I walk up to one of my programmers and say, give me that you're doing? Let me have that and I can program that? No, I haven't programmed in years. All right? I haven't programmed in years. Can I walk up to one of my other people, one of my infrastructure guys, and say, you know what, let me configure that server for you? Can I do that? No. Haven't done that in years. All right? But can I walk up to them and say, thank you for the job that you're doing? If they're there late at night, okay, they know that they need something and something happens, that they're there and that I'm going to be there with them. We had an accident happen one time where lightning struck a tree outside of our building, took down all the power, took down all the servers, literally took down everything. You know, though you guys are in IT, some of you are in IT, you just don't turn a server off. You've got to shut it down properly. Well, you can imagine what happened. 58 colleges, no library connections. 58 colleges, Blackboard was not working, Moodle was not working. I'm sure you're familiar with those two learning management systems. Nothing worked because everything comes through our network. Before I didn't even get on the phone, I saw the IT guys coming across the street because I said, how did you know this even happened? How did you know that? They said, well, you know what, we've got it programmed in our phone that if such and such happens to the server, we immediately get some sort of information back. So they knew this was happening. When you lead people, or when you lead an organization, remember that you are leading people. And it is so very important that you lead from these different frameworks. The structural framework, remember, that's just a small part. When you overcome IT is important, but if you want to make a difference, if you want to be successful, if you want to get to the level of senior vice president or owning a company, or even if you own the company, even if you develop whatever it is, you're an entrepreneur and you say, you know what, I can develop software myself. Well, if you're going to have people working for you, you've got to be able to make sure that those people can follow whatever your vision is. If you're going to do that, then you have to make sure there are 4 areas you want to make sure are always covered. That's the technology piece, which is the structure. You want to make sure the human resource piece, that is covered. You want to make sure politically that you know and understand the politics within your organization and the politics and organizations or the stakeholders around you. And then more importantly, you want to make sure that you're able to empower and enhance people through that symbolic framework. If you lead from those 4, and if that becomes a part of you, and I think that you can ask anybody that I lead. You can ask anybody that's ever been a part of my organization and they will tell you that they don't know that I'm doing this. I don't tell them that I'm doing this. When I train them, I do that sort of thing. But I don't tell them that I'm doing that. But they will tell you that we can depend on our vice president. We can depend that she's going to be able to do certain things. I had one of my technology guys is a technologist in my office. And this is where the rubber really meets the road, when you get this kind of comment. This is where you know your leadership has made a difference. This is where you know you're that kind of leader where you can actually lead an organization at a certain level. And he came in my office because he was looking for a raise. I have no problem with that. Everybody wants a raise, right? But he deserves one. The legislature said that because of the kind of position that he was in, that no one was getting raises in that area until they cleaned something up. And he came in there and I asked him, I said, well, you know, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. I have some boundaries on me because the legislature has said that we can't do X, Y, and Z in terms of increases. And I said, but you know I'm going to do everything that I can. And he said something to me that I will never forget, that I yearn and make sure that I can get the same kind of comment from everybody in my area. He said, Dr. Williams, I trust you. I trust that you will do what is best for me. I trust you that if you say that you are working on it, then you are working on it. Okay? When you are an IT leader, when you are leading from these 4 frames, then you will want to make sure that you get that same kind of trust, that same kind of respect from the people that you lead. If you don't, you won't be as effective. You won't grow the way you want to grow. People wonder why they get at a level of leadership and stop. It's because you don't know how to get through the other components of leadership. Now, in terms of finishing up here, strategies to integrate. I believe that all 4 frames have to be integrated. I believe if you're going to be successful, you just can't do one or the other. You've got to do all 4. How do you integrate them? Shared vision, mutual respect, open communication, develop trust, and then collaborate. Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. One of the things I love about this university, and I know that you guys do this, is that you work on projects together. Okay? You're taught how to do projects together. You work on those projects together. You have different people take different roles in the projects. And that is something that will take you a very long way. If you're not in a leadership position here in IT, then find one. Get in a place where you can actually practice these frames. If you've never heard of them before, if this is the first time that you've heard of them, go look it up, understand them, because these are the kinds of things that take you far in IT leadership. It is not how much IT you know. I have not put my hands to programming in about 10 or 15 years. I have not even turned on a server in 10 or 15 years. I used to develop online courses when I was here. I taught that in the Department of Education, in the College of Education. I have not done that in years, but I am accountable for it for 58 community colleges across the state. Now, what does that mean? I can't have that kind of accountability if I'm only thinking about technology. That is why it's so important that if a business is going to be successful, you've got to overcome IT. You've got to overcome IT. You've got to understand the people part. You've got to understand the symbolic part, empowering people, and you've got to understand the political piece and what happens and what makes people tick outside of the area that you're in. Now, that's it for me. You have any questions? Again, thank you very much. Yes. Oh, you can go ahead and clap for them. That's fine. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you said before that you got all the phone calls because you're the leader of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a problem with like centralization of power.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the steps that you've taken to prevent that failure of centralization? And do you have a backup system? And if you're a mentor to someone who's going to take over?
Very good question. Yes, I'll repeat the question. For the video, I'll repeat the question. He's asking me that the centralization of power, okay, and what am I doing in terms of making sure that I don't get all the calls, and am I mentoring someone to actually make sure that doesn't happen anymore? Now, centralization of power, what I've done is I've hired people that report directly to me over certain areas. So in terms of the accountability, I'm accountable, but they're responsible. If President Rawls comes at me, I'm going at them. It's kind of the way it works, okay? So that sort of thing happens there. So if there's something that happens in IT, then the CIO handles that, and the CIO reports to me. If there's something that happens in distance learning, there's somebody for that. The same thing for libraries. So we have all of that that's taking place. So that's the sort of thing. Am I mentoring someone? I'm actually mentoring 4 or 5 people. One of the things about having a good leader mentor other leaders is you run the risk of losing your good leaders, okay? When I mentor people, then I know beyond a shadow of a doubt they're going to get taken up. Some other state agency, some private organization is going to take them away. And that has already happened. I lost somebody recently to revenue. Was I excited for him? Was I proud of him? Yes, I was. Nothing excites me more than to see the people that I've led, the people that I've worked with move on and move up. But that also leaves a void. But what that does is that mentoring should also happen at my level down, but it should also happen at the other managers down too, so those people can move up. One of the things that I make sure of is if there is an open position in my department, the first thing I'm going to do is ask who from within can take this management position. I like to see people already doing management, already doing leadership before I put you in that position. Okay, good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
You said you haven't programmed or started a server in like 15 years. Could you tell us how your career started out and what you used to do and how you eventually come to being the senior vice president?
Thank you. Good question. He said, like I said, I have not started a server. I have not done any of that kind of technical hands-on work in about 15 years. And the question was, how did I get started? I actually got started as a programmer at Nortel. Okay, you know telephone switches? You're familiar with telephone switches? I used to program the code that make those switches work. That's how I started in telecom. I graduated from here. Can't remember, I think it was 84, 85. I should know that, but I can't remember. But anyway, but I graduated from here and went straight to work at Nortel. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I came back and got my master's. And then I went back to Nortel, because I had an internship, went back to Nortel. So that was the progression. That's how I started. I actually started as a programmer. And then I stayed at Nortel, went to another company called Centel, did engineering there. Again, that was around Y2K. So I was doing that kind of programming and that sort of thing for Y2K. Then I went from there to Broadband Technologies. Broadband Technologies was a company that was way ahead of its time. They were having fiber optic to the curb, basically, and it was just too far ahead of its time. It was a company that was just way ahead of its time. And so I learned about all the fiber optics, so all the technical foundational knowledge I actually had from that. And then from there, I started teaching. Somebody asked me if I would teach a course in the engineering, and that's when I really fell in love with education. So I started teaching and training the technology pieces that I was actually working on. And my dissertation was actually on subject matter experts like me, people who were very, very highly technical, and their ability to train others. Are they effective trainers? Can technical subject matter expert people actually teach and train others such that they can go out and do the job? So that's kind of how I eventually got there. Then one thing led to another, one position led to another. And I was here as a professor. Martin Lancaster called me and asked me if I would come and lead at that time I was vice president of just technology. The new president, Dr. Rawls, gave me the other pieces, the workforce development, the continuing education, the distance learning. So that's how that happened. One more question? Okay. Now, you've already asked one. Is there anybody else? Because I'll be here. I'll be glad to answer any questions afterwards also. I'll be here for a while. I'll be here as long as there are questions. But I know we've got to cut off the camera. Is there any other, one more question? Anybody else? Okay, you can go ahead. Nobody else has their hand up, so you can go ahead.
Like you said before, I also believe that trust is important in relation. I just want to know, like, what are the activities or things that you do to develop a deep trust in an organization?
Good question. What are the kinds of things that I do to develop deep trust in an organization? I make sure that I am trustworthy, okay? Integrity is very important to me, okay? Those kinds of things that, dependability, integrity, those kinds of things are very important to me. If I exhibit those, then I make sure that my staff sees that, all right? I make sure that if I respond to this staff person one way, then they know that I'm going to respond to this one in the same way, okay? There's no, you let one person do it and you didn't do the, I don't do that, okay? I don't do that. If I make a decision for something like that, it's because the situation was so vastly different that I had to, okay? So I make sure that my staff knows that the answer that I give them is going to be the best for them, the decision for them. And then we have fun things too. Like my birthday comes up and everybody knows who my birthday is because I love to celebrate it. I figured if I was put on the earth that day, then I need to celebrate that day, okay? So there's a big party that we always have to celebrate my birthday and everybody else's birthday. And I'm always there for them. If something happens, I'm there. I'm not there for every happy occasion, but if something tragic or something happens, you got to be there for your staff. So those kinds of things. Any other questions? I think that was the last one.
That was the last one.
Well, I'll be here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.